that. Click go live there. And slide there, and you're basically live. All right. Let's pop out some comments here. It generally takes people maybe like 10 minutes to hop in. So I always just try to bullshit for 10 minutes. So who? No, I've asked around and nobody knows really who you are. You don't post that much. And you just joined the group recently, right?
Yeah. Stumbled across this through, actually, my girlfriend got into EU last year when they did the Petra episode. So EU baby, but a very, very late EU baby.
That's all right.
So yeah, she got into the secret stuff after that, bought the book, and then I kept stealing the book until she eventually just gave it to me, and here we are.
You know, we make it available for free online. You don't have to steal it. I mean, just go online and check it out. So like, what's it like as a new, like, because most of the people who I talk to have been around for a couple of years at least, and then me, it's been so freaking long that I've been in this. What's it like as a new person? Like, how do you experience the secret? What do you think of it so far?
It's addictive, for probably primarily,
especially in the beginning.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much background to go through for people that have been working on it for decades. That's a huge resource, but also just a huge amount of work to get through it all. Yeah. I'm going to say work, but I just put on the podcast when I'm driving to work. But
Yeah, I bet there's going to be a couple of those historical brick walls you're going to hit. Just gauging what we're about to talk about, I'm betting you're about to hit a couple of those brick walls. Just that information from back in the day that maybe is a little difficult to find. But we'll see. Because so you were saying that each of these puzzles has something to do with a nursery rhyme?
Not a nursery rhyme, a fairy tale or folk tale, myth, legend, something in that genre.
How would that work? You want to walk us through it? Or
yeah. So the idea was that that each image is a fairy tale basically, and then that the fair people in the back of the book, being the descendants of the fair people of the first passage, would share some similarities there. Not a ton, but it's like you've got your mom's eyes or grandpa's nose or something like that. So you see flashes of them here and there.
Okay.
And those would be linked by the cities and the countries where either by the immigration group or the city where the puzzle is, or where the treasure is buried.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
It does. Would you like to go through a couple of them?
Yeah. So I'd like to just start with the first one that I started working on, which was Milwaukee, and kind of walk you through how I approached trying to find the treasure, and then back into this other theory from there.
Okay. Yeah. Apparently causing an echo, so let me fix that real quick.
All right. Give me just a second.
Sorry. That should be better.
I'm rearranging screens here because sharing that first one did not go so well.
No.
No. All right. Well, I'm going to be using lots of your images from 12 Treasures, so thank you for providing all of those.
You're welcome.
Huge help.
No problem. Glad somebody got some use out of them.
Heck yeah. All right. So, are you seeing that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, starting with Milwaukee. So, Lake Park. So, like some folks, I don't know how many of us are out there, but I wound up at the 1/5 mile cinder running track as my proud tall fifth. I just thought that the waterfall was more convincing. That led me down that path as a culvert by the formal definition, that being basically a pipe with water running underneath a path or a road.
Okay.
So, I mean, you can see that, can you zoom in far enough? There's a couple of grates here. So there's one here, and those lead in a straight line to the waterfall. And you can actually hear water running underneath those. So that's water flowing underneath it. So to my mind, that meets the formal definition of a culvert. But anyway, that led me down that path. You go 100 paces past the bridge that's at the foot of the waterfall. That leads you to a turn in the path where, hopefully there was a birch at some point, but who knows. And then you see the 1/5 mile track down there. So getting there and realizing, it's a cinder track, that just had me, thinking of the puzzler overall. I'm like, fairy tales. Wouldn't that be funny if that was connected to Cinderella somehow? And I didn't think too much more of it. But kept going down this rabbit hole and started looking more at the image. And the verse says that at its southern foot the treasure waits. So like, okay, let's go into anything that might resemble a foot here. And was looking at this area again and thinking, oh well, okay, cool. The track itself kind of matches the shape of the juggled objects, yada yada yada.
That's right.
But wound up kind of going cross-eyed and squinting at this and thinking, her neck and chest here kind of look vaguely foot-like. And I'm going to pull up another image and show you what I mean, because it's kind of hard to see off the bat. So I had to take a picture of my own foot here.
All right.
There you go. That's my foot here. It's like, yeah, well, kind of. That's sort of calf-shaped. But it's got this weird squiggle, and it's only vaguely like that. But then I thought back to my previous thought of Cinderella, and went down the rabbit hole of the German versions, the Grimm brothers, their version called Aschenputtel.
She cuts off her feet and stuff. It's awesome.
Yeah, that's the one where the two stepsisters, one of them cuts off her toes, one of them cuts off her heel.
Yeah. And
to try to fit into the slipper. So that would explain the kind of jagged edge here, is that the heel's been cut off. And then you've got the red background here. But the thing about that one is that that version of Cinderella is that she doesn't have glass slippers, she has golden slippers. So you've got a foot that's been cut down to a jagged heel on a red background representing the blood, and then a gold surround around that. So did some more digging into Aschenputtel and get some more images here. Started seeing some more similarities just in the way. Sorry.
No, you're good, man.
Tech issues. There
it's
we
fine.
go.
You're not going to have any worse than I've had in the past, so don't worry about it at all.
So anyway, started looking at this ring of juggled objects again, and I kept seeing these depictions of Aschenputtel being surrounded by a ring of birds. Now, in her story, it's not a fairy godmother. She's got this magic tree that grows on her mother's grave, and there's these birds that live in the tree. And so every time she needs something, whether it's the dress for the ball or helping out with the household chores, the birds come and help her out with that. And so those kind of represent the tasks that she's working on, which, if you think of just the slang term of juggling work, that could be the connection there. So you get this visual cue of the birds kind of in a circle around her in all these various depictions, and just that play on words of jug.
Okay.
So that got me thinking, and taking a different look at the back of the book to see if there was anything that matched there. Got spreadsheets on my other screen here. And so, looking at the back of the book and sorting by the origins and whereabouts, you've got fair people like the Haney Manticore, and that one's talking about. So there's no point in paying a professional to do the work when you can just when for a little more money you can screw it up yourself. So you've got Cinderella, who's been forced to do all the household labor instead of them just paying a servant like everybody else that a house of means would tend to do. Handy Manticore also says, together then these merry fairies watch as toes fly up out of the lawnmower. And we've got in this story, toes getting cut off. You've got the Phantasmagorie, a German reference, who has made superstars out of shallow and ambitious ladies and gentlemen from all walks of life. And you got the ambitious stepsisters who are, want to marry the prince as soon as the ball is announced. Same fair person then, Phantasmagorie. As even a William Morris agent knows, the actual manufacture and exploitation of a celebrity is easy. The difficult part is motivating an ordinary citizen to undergo the simple but excruciatingly painful and boring procedure. So, we talk about the stepsisters cutting off their heels and toes. That's an excruciatingly painful procedure for that. Passing fancies, also German. They seize your imagination and possess you with a lifelong burning desire to purchase and own something you'd never known existed the day before yesterday, and probably will forget the day after tomorrow. That kind of represents how the stepsisters heard about this, the ball to find the new princess, and were like, oh, I never knew this was happening, but I've got to have that prince. Passing fanciers are also quick and clever little tailors and cobblers who virtually overnight can raise or lower every lapel, widen or narrow, raise and lower every hemline, widen or narrow every lapel, sew buttons on or snip buttons off every collar in the land. So they can turn around clothing in a heartbeat. So when Cinderella needs a new dress and shoes for every ball, and there's 3 of them, okay, you've got quick and clever little tailors. Kindergartens, another German reference. So in America, where children are feared and neglected like many other living things, the kindergartens have the work cut out for them. And Aschenputtel, Cinderella, definitely gets neglected and needs somebody to look out for her. You also say a quick scan of the Grimm Brothers stories reveals the awful scrapes from which children escape and the unspeakable ends to which adults all come. We talk about the unspeakable ends. Depending on which version of Aschenputtel you look at, it's not just the heel and toes that the stepsisters lose. When they eventually go to Aschenputtel's wedding, the birds come along and peck their eyes out. So, yeah, just awful ends there. You've got other ones like the maitre demon, so from Wisconsin. That no inconvenience is too great for the maitre demon as long as it is more inconvenient for you. So one of the things the stepmother would do in this story is she would strew lentils in the ashes and make Aschenputtel go sort through them. So even though it's just like it's her own food that she's making dirty, as long as it's a pain, so she can torture her stepdaughter, she'll go ahead and do it. So sorting through those lentils and picking out the good from bad is one of the things that the birds helped her out with. So anyway, all of that, like I told you before we went live, this is pretty stretchy. It all relies on a very vague outline on a vague blob. And so I didn't want to go too far with that one before saying if anything else started to make sense. Was this applicable to other treasures? So let's dive into another one, unless you got any questions at this point. Or
Not yet. I mean, I will have a lot of questions. I have questions piling up, but I kind of want to see, because like when you just give one example of something, like there's no pattern, there's no framework. So I at least want people to hear 2 before we start digging in.
For sure.
Let's just see how the system works, basically.
Yeah, and no, for my own sake, I dove into other ones before I even told anybody about this. So
yeah.
So at that point, I just started Googling, famous fairy tales from each one of the immigration groups that they're described in the book. And let's see what I want to open now. So I had this all laid out before, and now it's all in different spots. So the first one that really clicked was the Irish one for Chicago, and I was like, great. So that's a puzzle that's already been solved. So at least the immigration group has been confirmed. All right. So started looking at the Chicago image and the verse of it, and let's just go through the image and point out a few things that I think you can find in one specific fairy tale. So just on the whole, we've got a lot of references to wind. So we've got the windmill, we've got like an anemometer, a weather vane, all kinds of stuff that's pushed around by the wind on all these towers. You've got I just want to describe a sense of scale here. With Castle Hat, if that's a building, how big is he? So that would represent a giant. It's a funny little string or rope that he's got here that's kind of pulling on that loop. So that would represent somebody who's inside the house pulling the strings. I want to mention the water tower again being a stone water tower. And then the fact that he's clearly a grown man, but just that all his clothing is baby blue. So this all came together in one particular fairy tale. Actually, hang on a second. Grab some books.
Yay! Books.
So, funnily enough, this one is in the Irish folk and fairy tales that Sean Kelly was working on at the time that The Secret was published. Now, I'm not using this particular version of it, and it wasn't published yet, so, but at least there's some awareness on the team of this fairy tale. So we pointed out all these things in the image, but I want to tie into the verse just a bit. The first line, where M and B are set in stone. So we've got the Chicago Orchestra Hall. Why just M and B? So we've got Bach, Mozart, Beethoven, Schubert, and Wagner. What happened to the rest of these guys? Why not any of those? And so my train of thought here. Oh, sorry, I'm pulling up the image and I'm on camera now. Sorry, I'm going to share my screen again. All right. Oh, can you still see me alongside that image?
Yeah, we can still see you.
Okay, sweet. You've got a great setup here. Anyway, so
Not
we've got Bach, Mozart, Beethoven, Schubert, and Wagner all on this hall, but only two of those are called out in the verse, right? Why? Because the fairy tale we're going for here is the tall tale of the Giant's Causeway, which is about two giants, one Scottish, one Irish. Remember that those are two of a single group. And the two giants are Finn McCool and Benandonner. So McCool, M, and Benandonner, B. They are set in stone, immortalized in legend, in an actual location in Ireland called the Giant's Causeway. So this is a natural... Oh, hang on. I'm sharing the image and not my screen anymore. Try this again. Oh, this is not behaving for me. Sorry about that.
No, you're fine, man. Don't worry about it. You got time. Technical difficulties are sort of our jam. Like it's what we're known for here.
All right. So I've got the Giant's Causeway here. So this is a natural rock formation that's on the coast of Ireland, and it extends off towards Scotland. And the local legend is that that giants were building a bridge between Ireland and Scotland. So that's kind of where the story kicks off. All right. So the one that I'm actually working on is not that kids version that I showed before, but it's the one in Celtic Fairy Tales by Joseph Jacobs, which is called A Legend of Knockmany. All right, so Finn McCool is working on the Giant's Causeway. He's building this bridge from Ireland to Scotland. And at the time, there's this big badass Scottish giant going around called Benandonner, who's intimidating all of the Irish giants. And he's such a badass that he squashed a lightning bolt into a pancake, and he carries that around in his pocket to intimidate them. So Finn sees him coming along and realizes just how big he is, and then suddenly says, "Oh, well, I'd like to go on home to my wife and hang out with her because I just really miss her. Not that I'm scared, I'm just really miss my wife." So he goes home, and I'm going to pull up the Chicago image again. Dang it, I closed it. All right, so he runs home to his wife, and she eventually gets the truth out of him that he's just running scared. But he goes home to his home at Knockmany. Let's see. Actually, I'm sorry, skipped ahead a little bit here.
That's fine.
There's one line that I want to go over that's very specific. And there's a reason why I'm using this particular iteration of this story. So they're talking about Finn, and say his wife Una, or rather Finn, lived at this time on the very tip top of Knockmany Hill, which faces a cousin of its own called Cullimore that rises up half hill, half mountain on the opposite side. There was at that time another giant named Benandonner. Some say he was Irish and some say he was Scotch, but whether Scotch or Irish, sorrow doubt of it, but he was a Tartar. So all of that, if you compare that to a line from the front of the book, it says, "The hill folk of Scotland and Ireland were in fact near cousins and of a single nation." So both of these giants, they're both giants, so that's your single nation or near cousins. Actually, they talk about the hills themselves being cousins, and they're both living on hills. So you've got this connection between these different parts of the book. Or, well, this one part of the book and this outside fairy tale. But it's really pulling in a lot of these themes in a very short space. So anyway, he runs back on home to Knockmany Hill. And everyone wondered why he lived there because, like, there's no water, it's super windy, and the real reason was it was nice and high, and so he could see his enemies coming. But his wife gets the truth out of him that he's running scared, and she says, "No, don't worry about it. I'll take care of this." And so she goes around to all the neighbors and gathers up all their iron griddles, and then she bakes a batch of bread with each loaf having one of these iron griddles inside. And then she makes a batch of soft cheese, and then she whistles, and that's the sign that anyone in the area is welcome to come and have lunch with them. She says, "Finn, quick, you got to act like you're your own son. So get in the crib, dress like a baby, and pretend that you're not home and you're that you're the baby." So the other giant, Benandonner, comes around and says, "I've been looking for Finn McCool. We've been prepping to have a fight with him." And she goes, "Oh, well, really? You really want to have a fight with my husband? You? Okay, if you think you could take him." He's not around, but as long as you're here, why don't you do some of the chores that my husband would normally do? So she says, it's so windy here. Usually when Finn's around, he'll pick up the house and turn it around so that it faces the right direction. Can he do that? And so Benedonner cracks his finger. He's got kind of a Samson thing going on. Instead of the power resting in his hair, he's got a magic finger that he cracks, and then he's got extra strength. So he cracks his finger and picks up the house and turns it sideways so that the wind isn't blowing through it anymore. And then Una says, we've also, Finn's been meaning to dig a well. Can you, would you mind digging a well for us? And so he just grabs the earth and rips this huge gorge, and now they have water at Knockmany Hill. And so she says, okay, come on in. Thanks for doing that. You've done the household chores. Why don't you join us for lunch? And so he's starving after doing all that hard work. And so she gives him one of these loaves of bread that has an iron griddle baked into it. And so he bites the bread and, of course, breaks out a couple teeth on the griddle. Says, what the heck is this? She said, oh, sorry, that's a little tough for you. Why don't you have another one? So he bites another loaf of bread and breaks 2 more teeth out. He says, what kind of bread is this? And she says, oh, well, that's what Finn eats. I didn't realize that you wouldn't be strong enough for it. And then the quote-unquote baby wakes up, and he wants some food. And so she gives him a normal loaf that doesn't have the griddle baked into it. And so he chows down on that. And Benedonner's looking at this kid like, who is this? What kind of teeth does he have in his head that can handle this crazy bread? So they move on from the bread, and then Finn's kind of teasing him. It's like, you think you're strong enough to fight my dad? He's like, well, yeah. Do you see how big I am? I've got this lightning bolt that I've smashed into a pancake. And so he says, well, can you squeeze water from a rock, or from a stone? And so he hands him this white stone that's just a normal rock. And so try as he might, he can't squeeze any water out of the stone. Of course, Una hands Finn the cheese that she made earlier. And so he squeezes that and squeezes way out of the cheese. And there you've got water. So kind of a parallel to Chicago there. You've got a stone water tower getting water from a stone. Not to mention all the windy nature of Knockmany Hill being the windy city. Anyway, moving on. At that point, Benedonner's just had enough. He's like, if the kid is this strong, how tough is the father? There's no way that I'm going to be able to beat him. He's going to destroy me. And so he's making his excuses and saying, like, thanks for lunch, but I'm going to head on out of here. But before that, I've just got to see what kind of teeth this little kid has in his head. And so Una says, okay, but make sure you reach back really far and check his molars. So he reaches his magic finger into Finn's mouth and checks his teeth. Of course, Finn bites his finger off and then jumps out of the cradle and is able to kill his enemy. Well, some versions say he killed him. Some say that he was so terrified that he ran back home to Scotland and ripped up half the causeway, and so that's why there's only a part on Ireland's side. So anyway, that's how Finn was able to defeat Benedonner with his wife's help. All of her cunning, where his strength wouldn't have done it. So same idea there. What can we find that matches this in the back of the book? All right. And so this is it's such a weird thing to include in the giant economy size, which is a Scottish. So I'm looking at Celtic, European, Irish, Scottish, Western European, and Illinois fair folk in the back of the book. So the giant economy size is a Scottish one. But it says she hides surprise bonus tarantulas and bananas, Italian nose hairs in the frozen lasagna, and tacky dish towels and boxes of detergent. So hiding all sorts of nasty things in food. That sounds like Una. She's hiding griddles in the bread to break people's teeth. If you look at the Chicago World's Fair, which is, I think it's both Irish and from Illinois. So he's a hulking, towering, powerfully muscled giant with a titanic inferiority complex. So you can view that as Finn being a giant, but still terrified of Benedonner. They also say, for some reason, the Chicago World's Fair toddles, which is like a toddler, which Finn is pretending to be. If you go to an Irish reference, we've got the Leprechaun Man. See if I've got an image for that. So you can see he's sulking there in his misery with a lightning bolt coming at him. And in the story, we've got the lightning bolt that Ben and Donner flattened into a pancake. What else we got? We got the Nymphomane, which is a Celtic fair folk. So their mortal Celtic counterparts sank roots in the stony land there. It was cold and wet and miserable, and it reminded them of home, which would tie back to the Giant's Causeway, just of this stony land off the coast of Ireland. And we can go on, but I guess the last one would be the Scrububus, which is Scottish. And they say, as everyone knows, brownies are the helpful household spirits of England and Scotland, and many tales are told of their domestic kindnesses. And we've got Scottish giant Ben and Donner here doing housework for his enemies. So that's Chicago.
All right. I think I got the gist of how you're working these.
Okay.
And I think we should break this conversation up into two parts.
Okay.
Fairy tales as applied to the verses in the paintings, and then we'll come back to supporting evidence in the back of the book, right? Because I feel like if we take this conversation the way it's presented and just talk about it as if it's one thing, we're gonna get sort of mired in the swamp of the back of the book, right? And I feel like you've sort of brought up an interesting point, and then about the puzzle, and then sort of taken a left turn with it, in that like the puzzles do, you're not ever gonna hear any arguments with me about the puzzles referencing not nursery rhymes, but fairy tales. You'll never hear that, because I mean the book gives you a list for each city of fairy tale creatures, of actual creatures from fairy tales, from mythic stories, things that we should apply, right? Now, I mean, like in Chicago, it gives you leprechauns. You say the Chicago dude is a giant. He looks more like a leprechaun to me. New Orleans, they give you, what was it, the Loop Guru, the werewolf. There's a werewolf in the image. Cleveland's gives you centaurs. There's a centaur in them. I mean, there's obvious fairy tale ties to these images, right? You don't seem to have picked any of the fairy tales or like the fair creatures that the book actually gives you, though.
I think it's a second part of the hunt. We're supposed to go outside there and find them elsewhere.
Okay. So, but the book, you would agree the book legitimately gives you fairy tales, and then, or fairy creatures to list to different areas, and then those fairy creatures kind of seem to be in the image, in most of them, right? Like the centaur, or like the Loop Guru. Like, we could argue over leprechaun and giant, but those don't matter as much as the other one that we've just sort of kind of pieced together with some. That's where it gets sticky with me. Like, it seems like we're ignoring the book and just kind of creating whatever we want. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. It's difficult to talk about. I'm sorry.
No, it's a fair criticism. I thought about that a bit, but I wasn't seeing anything that hit as many points in the images from the fairy creatures that were actually enlisted. But when you look at a story as a whole, that's where you start to see this get more and more applicable.
But is that intentional, or is it just finding patterns. Right? Have you ever heard the term apophenia? I think it's apophenia.
I'm not sure. But...
It's a term for like finding connection in random unrelated data, right? Like if you just have like just have a whole bunch of data and you're just finding random connections, even when the connections don't really exist, because given a large enough data set, you can find any connections you want. And the things that you're kind of streaming together, like if we go back to the Cinderella story, the kind of things that you're stringing together are very, very, very vague, like extremely. And when you were talking about Chicago, you were beginning the build up for Chicago, build up for the fairy tale for Chicago. Before you got to what the fairy tale was, everything was so vague. I was like, oh, he's about to start talking about the Wizard of Oz. Like 100% about to start talking about the Wizard of Oz. And then you sort of took a left turn because what you were describing applies to either of those stories, you know? So I'm just thinking about the Wizard of Oz. I'm just curious, like how, if the book's not telling us these things, and in fact, the book is telling us something completely different from the connections or the conclusions that we're coming to, how do we know that those conclusions are correct? What, you know what I'm saying? And it's not just us piecing together random data.
Tough to say. But I think just like you have to go out in the real world, despite what Byron said that, a kid in a library could solve this. We know that's
probably a lie. Yeah.
Yeah, probably tough. But I do think that a kid in the library could look at the images and come up with these fairy tale matches.
Maybe. Or he would look at Chicago and come up with Wizard of Oz, or, something else. I mean, I don't know, it's difficult. This is one of those things where it's difficult to talk about, right? Because it's your ideas versus my ideas, and who am I to tell you you're correct? So I can just kind of ask questions. I do know there's most of your supporting stuff is coming from the back of the book, and we can have that argument too if you want.
Well, you want to do one that doesn't have much from the back of the book?
That would be great. Yeah, that'd be great.
All right. Well, let's do one that's a little closer to home for you.
Okay.
So let's do St. Augustine.
Sweet.
Because that barely has anything in the back of the book. There are no Spanish fairies there. You got some Florida stuff, but the only Spanish one is a stretch, and that's Mira Chimera. It says in the text of it that she's descended from the Spanish Hadas, but she's identified as Greek in the origins and whereabouts. So even that, like, you have to stretch. But then again, there's that reference in the Jack-o'-lectern saying that, tricking somebody into saying that Iberia is a state in the Midwest. So Ohio being a state in the Midwest, yeah, you're connected through the Greek stuff with Mira Chimera. Where is it hiding?
You have questions in the comments, by the way. Rachel Malley wants to know if you're going to break down how you figure out the location of a cask in each city with your ideas. And Rob Caragulio wants to know how you would know which fairy tale to begin with.
I kind of brute forced it and read tons and tons of fairy tales until something clicked.
All right.
And as far as getting into the how to use this to find a cask, I don't know if it can be used to find a cask.
It's more like it seems more like background, not really background, but like overarching. Yeah.
It has that overarching concept. In the very beginning of the book, it says man was an inquisitive creature, and names were things he could possess. getting towards the end of the front of the book. Their treasure, their precious jewels, would belong to man if he could find them. So you've got that aspect of possession. In our land and in our time, the fair people and their treasures yet wait to be discovered. So let's read that sentence again. In our land and in our time, the fair people and their treasures yet wait to be discovered. So everybody's looking for the treasures, but I'd say that the fair people wait to be discovered as well. So it'd be that's where I'm going with this. So if man is good and kind and playful, which I'd say is childlike, he will find a remembrance of the history and tradition, which is the Wonderstones. So apply that to human immigrants as well as you do the fair people. That's my overarching concept here.
To be fair to other hunters, and to your previous point where you said that the fair people also wait to be discovered, I think most people kind of gloss over that because we all kind of agree that they have been. Like the fair folk for cities and for these individual puzzles is a puzzle in itself, and you have to figure that out with the information for the book. And if you're coming from like a traditional puzzle solving stance, and that's something that over time has been figured out. Not saying that you're wrong, but I'm saying that, you know, for the vast majority of treasure hunters, that's a puzzle that's already been solved. Like so they've already. Go ahead.
Are you talking about the small fairies in the images or something else?
No, I'm talking about like the fair folk that are represented like per city. Like the puzzle, the book gives you a list of fair folk or different types of fair folk in the front of the book, right? And it gives you a list of those fair folk and associates them with each of them with a gem, but it doesn't necessarily associate each with a painting, and it doesn't necessarily associate each with a location. And the puzzle for that is to figure out which of these goes where, you know, which of these to associate to which puzzle. And I think that's something that's basically already been in most people's mind already been figured out. They don't have to think about it too much because it's a puzzle that's been solved.
Gotcha. If you got any of those in the back of your mind and want to chime in with the alternate ideas on those, that's not something I've come across too often, so feel free.
With the fair folk, not necessarily like stories, not necessarily like nursery rhymes or fairy tales, but the fair folk that are associated with each image is basically already been, in most searchers' minds, basically already been figured out. Just like Loop Guru with New Orleans, Centaur with Cleveland, Leprechaun with Chicago. Just using the information that the front of the book gives you and the paintings and verses, you can pretty easily figure those out. I mean, the book literally gives you a list of fairies to associate with each, I don't know, country. It gives you a map. So once you know the immigration group for every city, it's not hard to narrow down which fair folk goes with it.
Gotcha. All right. Well, we'll keep going down this rabbit hole.
Yeah, no. I mean,
to join me in here,
dude. I encourage you. Let's keep going down the rabbit hole. I said, I'm not trying to tell you that you're wrong. I'm just saying, like, that's what most searchers feel.
Gotcha. All right. Well, let's hit St. Augustine. So this fairy tale that I'm associating with it is called The Water of Life, which should come as no surprise given the association with the Fountain of Youth. But you got to be careful which one you go for because this fairy tale is all over the place. I've got two Spanish versions. The Brothers Grimm did it. There's a version that's in the Arabian Nights. It's all over the place. It fits into a whole archetype of Russian fairy tales that are kind of, it's almost like going to Taco Bell, you know, it's the same 5 ingredients remixed in different ways.
Yeah.
This fairy tale is everywhere.
Somebody in the comments pointed out, and I feel like it's important for you to know this as well as for other people listening. Some of those fairies associated with the different cities have been confirmed, like Chicago is Leprechaun. Because when the guys solved Chicago, Byron signed Rob's book that the treasure's been found in the Leprechaun's lair. But that's kind of something, like I said, we already kind of knew, and nobody puts much effort into.
Yeah, I guess I just find that kind of unsatisfying as determining an overall architecture for the images, you know?
Yeah. Dude, I would
going through JJP's mind to structure these in so many different ways.
I would say the word unsatisfying describes a lot in this book.
No, maybe I'm reaching for something that's not there, but yeah, in the end, I studied a bunch of stuff, and that's been good on its for its own sake.
Yeah, I mean, don't stop. You never know what you're gonna stumble upon. Don't I'm not. I don't know what I'm talking about here.
But, all right, well let's hit this image. So St. Augustine. What have we got in this image? We've got a mountain with a bunch of faces kind of fused into the stone. We've got some water, a tree, and I'm going to go with the outline of a bird right here.
Okay.
All right. Any taking any issues with that or anything else?
No, man, I have no idea what that is. All
right.
I'm good with a bird.
All right. I know people have pointed out some birds in other spots, but that one always jumped out to me. But anyway, not zooming into anything that's super fine detail or anything like that. I'm just going to stick with those few things for an overarching theme. Obviously, we got all the Florida identifiers and stuff. We're not getting into that. So anyway, the water of life. So there were 3 brothers and a sister that lived together, and they were poor, but the oldest brother said, hey, what if we work really hard and get rich, and then we can build ourselves a palace? So that's what they did. They worked their asses off and built themselves a palace, and then invited the whole town to come see it. Beautiful palace, beautiful gardens. And they were just like, this is great. But then there's this one old timer in the town that says, oh, but you know what you still need there? Like, what? Well, you need a church. Okay. So they kept on working, raised a bunch more money, built a church. And they're like, great, we'll have the town back here, and everybody can see our cool mansion and church and whatnot. And then, yeah, this is awesome. But there's that one old timer that says, oh, you know what you really need? And I said, what? He said, you need a pitcher of the water of life, a branch of the tree the smell of whose flowers gives eternal beauty, and the talking bird. Just a random assortment of stuff. But that's the story. So we can pick all of those out in the image. So you've got the bird, the tree, and the water. So they ask this old timer, how do you find it? She's like, well, go talk to the giant. He'll tell you how to find it. So they go and talk to the giant. He says, well, you got to go up this mountain, but don't listen to the voices. And so the oldest brother says, well, I'll go up the mountain first. And so he goes up there and keeps walking. And the voices just keep hassling. They're joking at his expense and insulting him. And eventually he turns around, and as he turns, he's frozen into stone. And so he doesn't come back. The next brother goes, basically the same thing happens. And then the next brother. And then finally it's just the younger sister. And she's like, well, I guess it's my turn. All of them sacrificing themselves just for garden decorations. But she goes up the mountain, doesn't get distracted, finds the water of life, and takes a picture of that, takes a branch from the tree of beauty, and finds this talking bird. And then she's bringing this all back down the mountain, and she overfilled the pitcher, and so water's splashing out of the pitcher, and as it hits the rocks, these people who've been turned to stone start unfreezing, because it's the water of life since they're brought back to life. And so everybody gets unfrozen from stone. They come back down the mountain. They plant the tree of beauty in the garden. The bird sits in the tree, and they've got a fountain with the water of life in there. And of course, the local nobles hear about it, and the prince comes by, and she marries the prince, and they live happily ever after. The end. But anyway, so this one, it's really just about the all the faces and things that are in this mountain. So everybody who's been fused into stone, along with the 3 items that they were supposed to get on that mission. So, like I said, there's not much in the back of the book there. It's everything that's there is stretchy. I think I mentioned Miracle Mirror, but I think that's really more about actually solving the puzzle.
But this is a really good example. Like what you've just presented is a really good example, and it fits really well. And here's my sort of thoughts that I've always kind of had with this. Mm-hmm. John Palancar, his job as an illustrator is to tell a story, right? And we know he takes a lot of inspiration from a lot of different things. We know he takes inspiration for these paintings from fairy tales, nursery rhymes, and sort of I don't know, stories from the immigrant groups, right? Like we know San Francisco, China, inspired sort of that painting was inspired sort of by the story of Han and Poe, because he said that, so we know that one is true. But like his job as an illustrator is to tell a story, and it's possible that he's telling these sort of nursery rhymes or stories about the different immigration groups in the paintings. But he's also gone on record a lot saying that he didn't really know how the puzzle itself worked, right? Like he didn't know Byron's sort of end goal with these casks. Like he said that Byron would give him photos of things and he wouldn't even know why he's putting them in the painting. Like he would get a photo of a fence post. He knew it was a fence post, but he doesn't know why it has to be there. So if he doesn't know how the sort of puzzle works, but he knows that he's got to paint a compelling image, tell a compelling story, and maybe in a vague way he can get an immigration group across, telling the story. What I'm asking is it possible for John to have just done that? Maybe to pick nursery rhymes from these immigration groups and tell that story via the painting, but that's as far as it goes, because he doesn't understand the intricacies of the way Byron structured the treasure hunt aspect. He doesn't know where things are buried. He doesn't know what's important. Does my question make sense?
With the intricacies, are you talking about the back of the book stuff?
No, just the painting. Just the painting.
Paintings?
Yeah, I mean, we could just talk about it.
Absolutely, I believe that JGP doesn't know the back of the book. But although he said maybe there's something there, but it doesn't.
Well, he said he always thought there was something there.
Yeah.
I wonder if he's just vaguely trying to be like, this is the Spanish image. Let me find some story, like a Spanish story, to base this painting on. Otherwise, it's just a group of random objects, right? Like, how do you string them together? You would need to find something relatable to the painting or to the puzzle in some way. And if you don't know how the puzzle works, you at least know Spanish. You can find a Spanish story and tell that story through the painting. Does that make sense? But that doesn't necessarily mean it has to go any farther than that. Does it?
Yeah. So I mean, I guess maybe it's you can play this either way, that it's just JGP's inspiration, or that it is actually a part of the puzzle. But, yeah.
Somebody in the comments said unless Byron Preiss picked the fairy tales, but we know at least for San Francisco he didn't. Like that one was all John.
For San Francisco?
Yeah, Han Po.
See, I still wonder about that one, just because we know that I think we know that there's at least one painting that was started before the hunt was started and was adapted for it.
Yeah.
And that one I could see just existing as the background, before the figure was painted in front of it.
Yeah, I could see that one being the one, maybe, especially because
Hunt and Poe is about your earthly and your like heavenly and earthly selves, right?
Yeah,
so you got all the moons and stuff, and then the mountains, and
I could kind of see that, especially because he said he had to add to it, and that's the only one that has an entire section of the painting added. After the fact, the entire arch was painted. The timeline for how he painted these is really murky. Because
that one's just always struck me as the one that's been adapted.
Yeah, in one interview he said that he started this one first, and then painted the rest of them. So, and that would also lead to the one that's been adapted, because it was started, before the puzzle was even born. But in another interview he said it wasn't the one that he started first. He said he started Chicago and Cleveland first. So who knows? I don't know. Yeah, it could very well be the one that was adapted, though. I always thought it was Milwaukee, but that's just my opinion.
Yeah, I could see that working too. But,
well, it's because he's got another painting that's almost exactly like Milwaukee. It's just a dude with a circle of things above him. Same style, same color, same everything.
Yeah, but George, that one doesn't confirm my theory, therefore it must be wrong. That's what I'm trying to avoid here, but this is why I need a sounding board. So, Want to tackle another one? More image heavy?
Sure. Let's do whatever
All right.
you want to do.
This one's actually got a lot in the back of the book for it, but I think the image itself is pretty strong.
Okay.
So, Roanoke Island. What have we got in this image? We got this interior setting, looks like it's in a castle, suit of armor, weird suit of armor though. So we got this, the helmet that, I know a lot of people have called it like a cow or a horse, but with this dividing line down the middle here on the snout, I don't see either of those. I see a dog. I don't know about you.
I don't see a dog, but okay.
All right, stick with me though.
Okay, I'll stick with it.
So if you got a dog and you add horns to that, then you've got a devil dog, demon dog. There's a hundreds of years old English fairy tale tradition of spectral dogs. So this would fit into that whole tradition of hellhounds, basically.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not really a hellhound, right? Because it's just a statue. I mean, I think medieval scarecrow is a perfect name for it because it is actually set up as a scarecrow. So, but it's made of pieces of armor. It's in this castle setting. It's got ties to the nobility. Was there anything else I wanted to cover? Those are the main points. We'll say the way I identified this one is not actually a fairy tale. It relies on hundreds of years of fairy tale history, but it's a more recent story. So my justification for that is that from the front of the book that the court of Queen Mab has been diminished. Robin's gone back to the forest and all that stuff. So it's the fairies have basically already left. So this is what's left of that tradition. Give me 1 second here. I'm going to pull up another image.
Take your time.
So I know you've had some other guests on the podcast or the YouTube who thought that this is all either the shape of the helmet that is reference to the Wright brothers. It's an airplane, but somebody else claiming it's two baseball caps tying to the baseball fields. I think the second one was closer, but I think it's one hat.
Ah, okay.
So I think this is the Hound of the Baskervilles, and that's the deerstalker hat of Sherlock Holmes. So if you accept that it's a pretending to be a hellhound, and in this medieval or castle setting, all that revolves around trying to unseat the new heir to an estate. With this old family legend.
Okay.
So, going a little deeper into the image, you got some. Actually, my girlfriend figured this one out. You got the two bells that are on different lengths of chain here, but they're linked over here to the watch. So the way that we interpreted that was that those represent short and long durations of a sound. So this is Morse code. And telegrams play a key role in the story as well, trying to entrap people that are not where they're supposed to be. So you send a message to home and see if they're there or not.
Which Sherlock Holmes? We're going Hound of Baskervilles, right?
Yeah,
Hound
one
of
of
the
the best
Baskervilles.
ones.
Isn't that the one that had the Dancing Man cipher too?
I'm not aware of that.
Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, unless I'm just like absurdly wrong here, Sir Arthur Conan Doyle came up with this cipher called the Dancing Man, which if you're going with ciphers in the image, that dancing fairy would be a good nod to the Dancing Man cipher. I may
Gotcha.
actually look
No,
that up. I don't know. I could
I've
be
never
wrong.
heard of that. No, as far as other Doyle stuff, I was looking here and like we call it the skirt of the suit of armor. I was like, oh, maybe that is a nod to a study in scarlet, just the color.
Dancing Man cipher is a cipher created by Arthur Conan Doyle in 1903 and used in the Sherlock Holmes short story The Adventure of the Dancing Man. Sorry. Wrong story.
Gotcha.
I just thought I could help. I'm sorry. Sorry for throwing that up.
No, you're good. That's what, image 3. But I want to throw out just a couple of the back of the book references on there. Basically, the first thing that happens in the story is that they discover a cane, a walking stick that somebody's left at their door, and Holmes tells Watson, "Tell me what you make of this. We don't know who left it. What do you make of the man?" And so he describes this doctor that he thinks left it behind. Of course, Holmes is like, "Oh, well, that's great. That's so helpful." And Watson's like, "You've never given me such high praise before. You really think that I got it right this time?" He's like, "Oh no, absolutely not. Almost everything you said was wrong, but you helped me think about it the right way." So that to me speaks to the jack-o'-lectern who enchants his victims to come to the mic and make an ass of themselves. Later on, Holmes tells Watson, "You run down to the shop and tell him to send up a bunch of your finest tobacco," and then proceeds to smoke out their entire apartment and just make it a huge cloud of smoke, which clearly is a tie to the filthy hobbit. So let's see, jack-o'-lantern's a North Carolina reference, filthy hobbit's English. Let's go with Union Jack. So that's Canadian that wants to be English. Or loves everything that's English, and the whole story revolves around the new Sir Henry Baskerville, who is the heir to an English estate, but has been living in Canada. So, let's see. We've got the Hounds of News. They say, like all hounds, spectral and otherwise, the mutts of men can make a hell of a racket, baying, belling, barking, and howling. And that line, the spectral hound, is actually from this story. So Watson's writing back to Holmes. He says, "A spectral hound which leaves material footmarks and fills the air with its howling is surely not to be thought of." So just a few of the references that I find there.
I do have a big question that I legitimately like to ask everybody as soon as the back of the book comes up. How do you get around literally everyone who worked on the back of the book saying that the back of the book has no bearing on the puzzle whatsoever? And not just once, many times.
Mm-hmm. So the easy answer would be to say that they're lying.
All of
the hard
them?
answer, yeah, I don't know. Has anyone ever asked them who did the origins and whereabouts? Because honestly, if they just made everything that they wanted, and then BP's picking and choosing where each one is assigned and tying these in, that could be enough.
The origins and whereabouts. Let me look at that. The origins, which origins and whereabouts?
There's the 2 pages that tell you where
in the back of the book.
In the back of the book, yeah.
I don't know that anyone has ever asked or knows specifically who did that list.
Mm-hmm.
But I do know that everyone has said nothing past the verses in the paintings has anything to do with the puzzle itself. On many occasions, going as far back to 1982, Byron saying it to a newspaper, to Byron saying it to Brian and Andy when they got their Cleveland gem, to Sean and Ted basically saying we didn't care at all about this treasure hunt. We just wrote, like they wrote the back of the book before the treasure hunt was even a thing. To John, I mean, he's kind of like, yeah, maybe my art has some nods, and that's about all he's willing to say about it.
And that's why, short of the Milwaukee example that we backed into this whole thing with, I'm trying to stay away from specific dig sites because, well, A, either it's not related, like you're saying, or B, it'd just be too much confirmation bias. I'd be looking for additional things that aren't there instead of trying to keep this with a more defined, concise idea.
There is someone in a comment made a point that a lot of people make. Byron Preiss was editing the back of the book as he went, per all the markups and changes shown in Byron's manuscript doc. You can count the number of changes that Byron made in those manuscript docs on like 2 sets of hands. He didn't change much. And mostly it was like he changed the names of things. Like he changed Handy Manicore to Handy Manicore from Handy Andy.
Yeah.
You know, like he didn't change a lot. And we've got some that have, or like some of the back of the book entries, we've got like 3 drafts of them, and they're basically the same.
Yeah, that's something I haven't gone into enough, and I need to do more on the
history,
the drafts,
or the drafts.
Yeah,
the drafts. Yeah. The history of the back of the book is interesting. I wish people would actually like look at it without being like, oh God, it's the cryptex. It's like the key to the entire puzzle. Because like the way they started writing the back of the book to write a completely different book, they were writing the Guide to the Fair Folks of Central Park or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
And then that just got packaged into The Secret. Like it's an interesting story, but you know, whatever. So essentially your answer to my question is we're just kind of ignoring that.
Yeah, I haven't found enough to deter me from this interpretation, so
okay.
Yeah.
But do you not agree that with as much data as in the back of the book, you can find connections to anything, especially if you're looking at stuff like if you're taking things out of context, right? Like I want to go back to Chicago, right? Like I made a note about something.
Okay.
Your Chicago World's Fair, you were saying it was a giant because it's towering with the inferiority complex. And it was dressed in children's clothes because it mentioned toddles, like the giant toddles.
So he's the giant toddles because he's dressed in children's clothes, basically.
Right. So yeah, I guess those kind of connections make sense if you take it out of the context of satire. Like if you put it in the context of Chicago World's Fair being a satire ferry representing Chicago, it makes a whole lot more sense because the Chicago World's Fair is towering with inferiority complex, just like Chicago does, which is a towering huge city with an inferiority complex to New York. And it toddles because Chicago is a toddling town. Like that's, you know, it's satire. So if you take it,
damn that, I always thought that line seemed shoehorned in there, but it didn't make that connection. Oh, it's
a toddling town.
Thank you. I always thought it was such a weird phrasing, weird inclusion in there, but yeah, that's toddling town. Okay,
I feel like there's this phrase called stigmatic reading, right? And what it essentially is approaching a text not to take in the text as a whole, but approaching the text as if it's a mysterious text that's giving you hidden information, right? And I feel like a lot of the people who draw clues from the back of the book read the back of the book as if it's stigmatic text. It's just text there to give you clues to something else, and just ignore, you know, the text as a whole and what the text as a whole is trying to tell you. Because if you take these satirical entries as a whole, they very accurately describe pop culture, common tropes, and all kinds of stuff from the late 70s, early 80s. But then again, like if you approach any text with sort of thinking that there's some mysterious code in there, you're going to find the mysterious code. Just like, I don't know, the Da Vinci Code or the Bible Code, or the people who think William Shakespeare hid clues to his true name and his, you know what I'm saying? Or the people who think the Necronomicon is a real text hidden in H.P. Lovecraft's work. Like, if you look for this kind of stuff, you're going to find it, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's there. So I don't know.
Taking that another way, if you take that as fact, as that there is something there, then you should, right away find something when you go looking in fairy tales for that, because that's kind of the order that I went in. It was like, read everything that you can through the applicable fair people in the back, study the images, and then read a bunch of fairy tales and just repeat. But I went through half a dozen books before I found the story that I like for Africa. So.
Yeah. If you approach the book that way, right? Like, if you approach, then you have to accept the fact that the people who created the book are untrustworthy. You have to accept the fact that they're all lying to you. And if they're lying to you about this, what else are they lying to you about? Like, if you can't trust the creators of the puzzle to accurately represent what the puzzle is, then you can't trust the puzzle itself. And if you can't trust the puzzle itself, then it could be whatever you want.
Yeah, but I mean, this isn't the main puzzle. This isn't about finding casks. This is about the.
This is just about finding inspiration.
It's the friends we made along the way, yeah. The background puzzle.
That's a curious thing. Like, I kind of want to dig into that. Like, what do you feel these connections or these fairy tales or these stories? What do you feel they bring to the book? If they're not helping you find the dig spot,
it's mostly just a secondary Easter egg.
You think it's like context, maybe?
Yeah, maybe a bit.
Okay, I mean, I could see that. I wouldn't even argue that.
I don't think it really helps you find much, except for, I don't know. There are a couple where I found some cool stuff. But,
yeah. You want to share any of those? Like, if they're not going to help find a dig spot, I don't see any problem with sharing them.
All right. Well, why don't we hit the big one?
Okay. I like big.
All right.
Rachel Malley in the comments has asked like 4 times, how do these fairy tales help us find a dig spot? And you have said like 10 times they do not.
No, this is just for fun.
Yeah. Okay. Just want to make that clear.
All right. All right. So, New York. This one has its references in the back of the book, just like all the other ones. But honestly, this one, I think, defines the puzzle as a whole. So you've got one of the fair people and her descendant. It's a mother and daughter. You got a box of jewels given by the fair people to a human that's buried and then dug up. You've got the word remembrance used repeatedly, and it refers to both the jewels and the into the descent of the fairies, which kind of matches my idea here that these treasures are one and the same, that the fairy tales and the actual casks are representing the same thing. That fair person and the jewels in the story give the same like physical sensation, further cementing that idea. The fairy and her descendant vanish into nature. Overarching themes. There's a kind of mirroring the front of the book with the whole idea of man and civilization kind of pushing out the fairies. There's a class struggle between like local serfs and the nobles from far away who are trying to run things and trying to organize these things where they really don't belong. They're trying to impose control. We definitely hit the proud fairy tradition of playful torture and occasional benevolence towards man. And there's just the idea of knowing the value of the fair people's jewels. There's that line that Consider a group of those frugal lowland dwarves, the Alvin, hovering invisible and observing an economic agony while their old friends, the Canarsie tribe, traded Manhattan Island for a handful of trinkets. Could it be that they believe Peter Mignot's glass baubles possess the same worth as the Alvin's treasure stone? So just understanding how valuable those things are compared to trinkets. So anyway, that's overarching puzzle themes, not the back of the book stuff. Getting into the image, let's start at the top. We've got all these different chambers here of different colors. I don't have anything for the clock or for the this rectangle here, but just taken as a whole, we've got all these things of different colors. So I'm going to point out that these are different stones and metals. Let's see, I've got something for this, but we'll have to cover that at the very end. Moving on down, we've got the woman wearing the long white dress. So I'm going to interpret that as a wedding gown. But you can see it's changing colors at the bottom. So I've got some color changing going on. Further down, we've got these. Some people call them stones. I've seen one person refer to them as eggs, like Fabergé eggs. So we've got some eggs in the story. And then down to the bottom, we're going to get extremely stretchy with this, but bear with me. You can take this part or leave it. So we've got the water at the bottom, but it's kind of broken into two different parts. We've got the spray and then the columnar waters down below. So I'm going to interpret these as two different kinds of stones. So the spray on top get the image where it's supposed to go. To me, it resembles lapis lazuli. Reach there, which has this characteristic white spray pattern. And then the next one down below with these kind of swirly but parallel lines here. It's a different color, but resembles malachite. So I know this because I play D&D and I've got some bougie dice sets, and one of those is malachite. So.
Nice.
So anyway, we'll keep those in mind, zoom back out, and hit the story. So I apologize in advance. This one was going to drag on. This was 30-something pages, and I slimmed it down to 4. So bear with me.
All right.
I really tried to shorten this one. I promise. But this one is called The Mistress of the Copper Mountain. It's by Pavel Bajov. So one day, 2 of the men from the village went to take a look at their hay. Oh, wait, I've got the wrong file open. This is my semi-short version. I need my extra short version. Like I said, this was a pain to slim down. Okay. So 2 miners from the village were on the day off and went to check on their hay fields. And at one of the mines where they worked, they got malachite and lapis lazuli and copper. And at the other mine, they got iron. So they got as far as the iron mine, and then they lay down in the grass and fell asleep. But all of a sudden, the younger one, whose name was Stepan, woke up and he saw a woman sitting nearby. He wanted to say something to her, but then it hit him that that's the mistress of the Copper Mountain, which is their local goddess. So she's also called the Malachite Maid. So her robe was made of silk malachite, which is stone, but it looks like silk. He tried to get away before she saw him, since the old folks had told him that the mistress liked to trick folks. So she saw him and teased him a bit, but he was not afraid of her. And she said, "That's what I need. I need someone fearless. When you go down in the mine tomorrow, the bailiff will be there. You tell him this and don't forget a word of it. The mistress of the Copper Mountain has ordered you, you stinking goat, to get out of the iron mine. If you break up my cap of iron there, I will sink all the copper in the other mine so deep you'll never find it again. Tell him that, and I'll marry you." So that's bringing the long white dress with the symbolism as a wedding gown. So the next morning, Stefan walks into the mine, marches right up to the bailiff, and delivers the message. So, of course, he is flogged and sent down to the mine, and the overseer puts him in the worst area. Like, there's nothing there. It's all wet, and he chains him to the wall and gives him this task where he's supposed to get this unreasonable quantity of pure malachite. So Stefan starts to swing his pick, and the malachite's just falling down like someone's throwing it. So obviously this goddess, the mistress, is helping him out. So then she appears in a flash of light. I'm going to pull up some other photos here as we go along. So she appears to him in a flash of light and thanks him for his courage and says, "Come and see my dowry. I too stand by my word." By the way, if we're calling this New York and you think of a green lady and all this light radiating from her, and you got to see the Statue of Liberty with her crown radiating like that. So to me, that's the image that inspired everything. Anyway, so she leads him into the mountain, and they go through these great chambers underneath the ground, and all the walls are different. So some are green, some are yellow with golden specks. Others have copper flowers on them. There were blue walls, too, of lapis lazuli, and her robe kept changing colors. Sometimes it shone like glass, and then it would shimmer with colors or sparkle like diamonds, or go coppery red, and then shine a silky green again. They stopped in a huge chamber with walls of malachite and diamonds, and the dark roof was the roof was dark crimson with a tinge of black and had flowers of copper on it. And so she said, after seeing all this stuff, "Now you've seen my dowry. What do you say to marrying me?" But Stefan was already engaged, so he stuttered and he said, "Your dowry is enough for a czar, but I'm just an ordinary worker." She told him to stop hedging and says, "Will you marry me or not?" So he says, "I can't. I'm promised." He has a fiance. So she praises him for not snatching at her wealth and trying to get rich, and for being true to his fiance, and says, "I'm going to reward you. So I'm going to give you a gift for your fiance, which is a casket of malachite filled with jewels and ornaments of every kind." And she says, I'll get you away from the bailiff too, and you'll live in plenty with your young wife, but beware, don't keep remembering me after this. You need to forget me. That'll be my third test." And then she fell into tears, and the tears fell down into her hand, and they turned into valuable stones. And she said, "Take these for a nest egg. You'll be rich." So when you're talking about these things that are stones, but also kind of look like eggs, hey, they're stones, but it's a nest egg. So Stefan found himself back at the wall in the mine, and the overseer returned, and he was going to make fun of him, but he was just like, "Holy crap, there's so much of this fine malachite here." So they called the master of the mine from St. Petersburg, and they kept promising him, like, "Hey, you find more and more of this, we're going to give you your freedom." So eventually he found these columns that were 35 feet, or these stones they carved into columns that were 35 feet tall, and they sent to St. Petersburg to the biggest church, which is St. Isaac's Cathedral. And after that, he and his fiance were free. So they married and had children, but Stefan was never really happy, and he pined away. But he would still go hunting by the mines, although he never really came back with anything. And then one day he just didn't come home. And they went out and looked for him and found him dead and lying by a great rock with a big smile on his face. But he had one hand closed tight, and they found the stones that the mistress had given him, which were her tears. And he had never told his wife about it. But then when they tried to force the stones from his hand, then they just crumbled into dust. And the final line of this is part 1 of 2. She says, that's what she's like, the mistress of the Copper Mountain. It's a chancy thing to meet her. It brings woe for a bad man, and for a good one, there's little joy comes of it." Which, if I can find my notes, that really says the proud fairy tradition of playful torture and occasional benevolence towards man. So that's part 1. That covers when Stefan was alive. And then part 2 is called the Malachite Casket. Now both of these stories are in a volume called the Malachite Casket, so no confusion there. This is the story, not the volume. So Nastasia was Stefan's widow, and she was left with the casket and all the jewelry. And at first, when he was alive, she would try it on, but it never really felt like it fit her. She never felt easy in them. So the rings would pinch, the earrings would pull in her, and the necklace felt like ice. And anyway, it was too fancy for her, and she felt embarrassed to be decked out like a Serena, so she just put it away in her chest with all her homespun. So Stefan had left his family well off, but after a few years after he died, they started to get a bit poorer, single mom. And so his family started pestering Nastasia, who's his wife, to sell the casket since it would have been worth thousands of rubles. And so merchants flocked and tried to bid on it, but they only offered 100 or 200, and they said they were being kind for the sake of her children, but really she saw through it and they were trying to rip her off. So she didn't sell it. She had two boys that were normal, but her younger daughter, Tanyushka, was this beauty, but not like the rest of the girls in the village. So she had dark hair and green eyes. And Stefan would laugh it off. Like, no wonder she had black hair. He worked underground his whole life, so he took the darkness with him. And no wonder she had green eyes after all the malachite that he had mined. And so he said, I've got her for a remembrance. And he started calling her Remembrance. So when Stepan died, his wife Nastasia tried to cheer up Tanyushka by letting her play with the casket and all the jewels. But for her, everything looked like it was made for her. And she put it on, and she said it made her feel all warm, and like she was sitting in the sun, and somebody was stroking her gently. And Nastasia remembered how they had pinched her and pulled her and frozen her, and it was so different. So she thought that was odd. So she put the box away. But her daughter was always asking her to take it out and let her play with her father's presents. But as she got older, she would just get the casket out for herself and play with the jewels, until one day a robber came along, and she was wearing the jewels, but the robber was blinded by the brilliance of her. And after that, her mother hid the casket by burying it in the cellar. And she thought that was the end of it, but then Tanyushka went looking for the casket. She saw a light coming from the cracks in the floorboards, and went down through the trapdoor and found the casket. And so even though her mother thought that she had hidden it well, she would just go and dig it up whenever she wanted to play with it. Then at some point, the mistress of the Copper Mountain herself came to stay with them, but she was disguised as a traveler. So Tanyushka wasn't very affectionate with her own family, but then she latched on to this strange woman and started clinging to her. And the woman called her child and daughter instead of by her own name. And she even showed her the jewels, the remnants of her father. And so she put on the jewels, and the woman tweaked them here and there, and they sparkled differently. And she stroked her hair and her back gently, which gave her basically the same feeling that she got from wearing the jewels themselves. Emphasizing again, they're really the same thing, the fair people and the jewels. And she told her to turn around and watch everything that she saw. And so she turned, and there was this vision in front of her. It was a great hall. It looked like a church, but not quite the same. So the ceiling was supported by columns of malachite, and the walls were covered in malachite to the height of a man, and there was a pattern of malachite along the top. And in front of Tanyushka, like a mirror, stood a beautiful maiden with dark hair and green eyes. And she wore a robe of green velvet and all kinds of precious stones, and was surrounded by fancy people. And then she realized, oh, this maiden's wearing her father's stones, and she cried out, and the image vanishes. So the woman told her that she would see the rest of the vision in due time and figure out who the maiden was. But the place was in the Tsar's palace, in the hall that was decorated with some of the malachite that her father had mined. So eventually the stranger leaves Nastasia's house, and Tanyushka grows up, becomes even more beautiful. And at that point, there's a fire, and their house burns down, and they lost everything except the casket. And they finally have to sell the jewels. So the merchants come back around, and they're bidding more this time, 500 or 1,000. But Nastasia holds out, and she says, "Hey, I want 2,000 for this." At that point, 3 newcomers come to the town. There's a new bailiff, his wife, and the new master of the mine, because his father had died, and so he's the new master. Now, the bailiff's wife is the master's ex-girlfriend, so that there's a whole messy series of love triangle nonsense there. So the bailiff's wife buys the casket from Nastasia, which angers the local merchants, but she finds that they fit her the same way they did Nastasia. They pull and pinch and freeze her. The bailiff, of course, runs into Tanyushka and is like, heck with my wife, I found this new beauty, and falls in love with her. And then the new master shows up, and he hears about the jewels, and he's not a good-looking guy, so he's obsessed with anything that can make him feel fancier. So he buys the jewels from his ex-girlfriend, and he pays her with an IOU with the mines as collateral. And then he meets Tanyushka and is likewise smitten with her and proposes on the spot. So she tells him no, but eventually says, I've heard tell that there's a chamber in the Tsar's palace decorated with the malachite that my father got. If you show the Tsarina to me in that chamber, then I'll be your wife. So they set a date. The master loans her the casket, and he rushes off to St. Petersburg to get ready for her. And all this gossip spreads that he's got some new beauty that he's going to bring to town, and everyone wants to meet her and see her. And so all of them gather on the appointed day. Tanyushka puts on her robe and her jewels, and then dressed as kind of like a serf over that. She puts a kerchief around her head and wraps herself in a sheepskin, so she looks like she's just some villager. She approaches the palace, and the guards turn her away, and then she reveals everything underneath. Her the master who's supposed to be her future husband, he had run away and was like, oh, I'm embarrassed to see her when she's dressed like this, but then he comes slinking back. But she chastises him. Anyway, then they're directed into some chamber in the palace, but she sees that it's the wrong one. And it's like, this isn't the chamber with my father's malachite. And so she chastises her fiance again and says, it must be that chamber. And so she just goes wandering through the palace on her own, ignoring the direction from the people that work there. And everyone thinks, oh, we're just following her. So they go along with her. And so she goes and stands by this wall of malachite. So the Tsarina comes in and goes to the first chamber and finds it empty. It's like, where the hell is everybody? And they're like, oh, well, they just followed this girl. And so she's irritated because her instructions were ignored. But she goes and enters the malachite hall, and everyone bows low except Tanyushka. And the Tsarina says, show me this arrogant bride of the master's. And then Tanyushka's like, no, I told you I wanted you to show the Tsarina to me, not the other way around. So she's disrespected as his future wife and says, I'm done with you. You've lied again. That's it. I don't want to see any more of you. Take your gems. And so she just leans back in the malachite wall and melts into it and vanishes, leaving nothing but the gems behind her. Oh, I've got more pictures. Hang on a second. Oh, that's her playing with the casket, or cask as we might call it. This is her vision as a child, but becomes her future self. This is how happy she is with the guy that's supposed to be her future husband. Super irritated. So she leans up against the wall and just melts away, like I say, vanishing into nature. So into the stones that really are her, because she's just a changeling. So all that was left was the gems sparkling on the surface of this malachite panel. And after everybody gets over the shock, then the master who she was supposed to marry he starts trying to pick the gems off of the wall, but each one of them turns into a droplet, and so he doesn't get any of them. They all just disappear. So he's left with nothing. So after that, he basically lost his wits, started drinking, and ran the mine into the ground. The bailiff, who had just come in, lost his job, also started drinking, and also pined away over Tanyushka because they were both in love with her. And the bailiff's wife was left empty-handed because she had sold the jewels for an IOU with the mines as collateral, and they had been run to the ground, so they were bankrupt, and she got nothing. But after that, talk started going around that the mistress of the Copper Mountain had a double, and folks would see two maids in malachite robes, two of them together. So that is the malachite casket and the mistress of the Copper Mountain. Oh, sorry. I know that was a long one.
No, dude. Most of the comments were about like people liking the story and wishing you would record nursery rhymes for people to fall asleep to, like bedtime stories and stuff. So yeah, don't worry about it being long.
All right. So anyway, we're going back through the image there. So we've shown the stones, but where did my mouse go? There we go. I want to look at the just different colors that copper can be, which kind of matches some of the panels in the top here. So you got the reddish, you got the bluish, gold, obviously. So different colors of copper. And obviously we got some blue and green stones in there too. We covered actually we're going to go through it twice, that there's supposed to be a wedding, so that wedding gown is symbolic of that. Early on, the mistress's robe was changing colors, so we got this color shift from white to blue. And then the nest egg, which was the jewels, and then the different types of stone down here. So where this gets interesting, if you try to use it as an actual guide to go dig somewhere. which I mostly try to stay away from, but this one was too cool. The neat thing about this, aside from like just being a cool story and like all political, where all the rest of them were kind of dull, is that this one's tied to real places. So when they go to the Tsar's palace and want to see this Malachite Hall, that's an actual place. So that's in the Winter Palace in St. Petersburg, which looks like that. And there's the hall. So you can see we've got the columns of malachite. Now it's not quite as described in the story. You know, you don't have the big panels, you know, the wall to the height of a man. That's all pure malachite. I haven't been able to find any pictures that match that, but this is the Malachite Hall in St. Petersburg, or at least that's what I thought at first. Because it turns out there's kind of two. The other one is not called the Malachite Hall. This is the agate room in the Catherine Palace, which, you know, is primarily this red jasper, but also has a lot of malachite accents. So you've got these large panels. You've got the roof details that the story describes. So I don't know if there was a mix-up there, either on the storyteller's part, or what happened, or if, you know, it's changed over time. But there are a ton of malachite accents in this other palace. So again, you can see this across the roof, a bunch of different green accents, different photos of the same stuff. This is where it gets interesting, because I know this year a lot of people have put in a lot of effort to try to figure out where those domes in the image came from. And, you know, we got that fifth color printing, right? That's really specific. This is the Catherine Palace. How's that for a color match?
It's pretty good.
So it's got some proper onion domes. They're not that color, but the building itself is that color.
Yeah.
And it's got a cluster of them just like that, all built into this same building.
All right.
So my thought is people have been looking in New York for this, but it's in Russia.
You're joking, right?
Well, but what if there was a corollary to that you could find in New York? If you were able to recognize that from the color and the onion domes and, you know, recognizing the story, what if you could find somewhere in New York that made sense that would be a symbolic match for that?
All right.
Not literal, just symbolic. So these domes, that's over the church that's built into the Catherine Palace.
Mm-hmm.
So Church at the Catherine Palace, let's say Catherine's Church. So what if we went to New York and went to St. Catherine of Siena? So Catherine Church, kind of a match there. Nothing too obvious from the outside. There's no domes here, but if you look a block away, for people who still like Rockefeller as man of hard word, a block away from there is Rockefeller University, which has this Caspary Auditorium, which is a geodesic dome or geodesic dome, if you like the back of the book. So anyway, there's a dome nearby, but that's probably just a coincidence. But for people who like Rockefeller, that might be a way to lead there. What's interesting is if you look inside there, so this is the altar inside St. Catherine's. And something struck me about this. So this detail along there just reminded me of pages 2 and 3. So if we rotate that, we've got this fence with this squiggly pattern that to me looks like a halfway decent match for just the pattern in the fence kind of matches the filigree around the altar there. But I mean, that's a whole fence. We're missing some pieces here. This would just be the overlay there. If you go outside, the fence itself is not a great match. It's all square stuff. It does have this contained shape here, kind of like this has circles, this has squares, but not a great match. But if you go back to the front here, you got the handrails, which do have that not exactly the same pattern, but the circular these circle shapes built into the handrails, which makes me wonder if the fence was replaced at some point. We're just missing that detail, but we need somebody on site to go talk to these folks and confirm. But anyway, that would be a way of taking one of these story elements and bringing it into the real world. It's to match that pattern here. Stretching on top of stretching, I know.
I mean, honestly, I don't know what to say. Yeah, I don't know what to say. Because, I mean, like, does some of this work? Yeah, kind of. But by your own definition, it doesn't I mean, like, the stuff that you're doing to the site in New York, it doesn't really work. It's not quite the same. It's kind of stretchy. The rest of it, the stories, do they work? Yeah, kind of. But by your own admission, they don't really matter. So it's like, we could talk about them, but it's almost like, what's the point if they don't matter, If it just gives context.
Yeah, I don't think it's really going to help anybody solve the hunt, probably.
Yeah. I just don't know what to say. It's a cool story.
Well, it kind of comes down to the whole question of was there a point to this beyond Byron trying to make money and trying to sell lots of copies of the book, or was there some overarching target there where
what do you think the point would be other than to make money?
So the way I view it is that his community's story as a Russian Jew in America kind of mirrors the story of the fair folk. That in the late 1800s, early 1900s, lots of Jews fled Russia. They were expelled. So you've got a clear parallel to the idea of civilization. The predominant culture forcing them out, and then so that's his community history, but his own personal history. Growing up in the Cold War, he's born at the end of the Red Scare and McCarthyism and all that. So in this new world, he would have had this feeling that, oh, well, shoot, am I too Russian to be American now? We've got these competing, sometimes conflicting identities that we all have. And one thing that stuck out to me was with your interview with Bill Stout. He said that Byron was the type of guy that couldn't walk past a newsstand without seeing some terrible headline and feeling like he had a personal responsibility to do something about it.
Yeah.
So to me, like, Byron's just where he existed in history tells me that he would have known this feeling and probably recognized that all of us have felt that to some extent. All of us come from somewhere before the US or Canada, and we've got these competing identities. And that if we reached out and tried to learn something about each other, through that cultural lens, that we would see each other. What's the line in the book? I'll break it out here. The descendants of the fair people from the old world and the new would henceforth live, and this is in italics, and be seen among man and peace. So I think that being emphasized there is that we're supposed to, see each other and alleviate that that conflict within our neighbors. That we can be both things. We're where we came from, and we're members of the community that we're in now.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that at all. But I don't think we need any outside information for the book to make that point.
But how does it make that point if it doesn't inspire you to go and dive into these cultures in some way?
Well, I think
now, you can do that on location, sure. So that's valid. I think that's where you're going with it.
Well, I think you're taking that the wrong way. I think it inspires you to go out and research these cultures because it made that point. The book impressed upon you the importance of other cultures and other people and peace between them, and turmoil between different groups, and that's what inspired you to go out and research the rest. It's not, it's like a cart before the horse thing.
Well, I think just like these dangling the jewels in front of us as the carrot to go engage with these communities, that if you view this also as a secondary puzzle behind that's a similar thing, that the names are something we can possess.
Yeah.
And so that we're meant to go and find these cultural cornerstones of these peoples.
All right.
And view them through that lens.
Okay. I guess either way, the end goal is noble, so the end goal is worthy of the journey, so no matter which inspired what. You know what I'm saying? No matter which step was inspired by the other. Cool. Anything else you would like to talk about?
One line from the front of the book.
Sure.
In The Vanishing, there's it's such a weird little subplot that Yorib is he's attacked by 4 Indians on a horse, and then they steal it back and forth. And how weird is that?
I thought that was like an actual Indian story.
Oh, is it?
I think so. I remember I did a bunch of, because that also was strange to me. That was a weird thing to just throw in the middle of that story. And I remember digging into it, and I thought it was an actual Native American story of the warrior's grandfather's horse or something that was stolen by bandits and then stolen back. But I can't remember. But you are right. It's an odd story to throw in an odd place.
That struck me as weird until I came across one of these. Oh, 4 dudes on a horse. 4 dudes on a horse.
Yeah.
So I'll have to look into yours. This Native American story. This is what I connected it with.
Just 4 dudes on a horse?
Well, the same 4 dudes, and these are images from all across areas that used to be ruled by Charlemagne.
Okay.
And so there's a 12th century French epic that has been translated into many different languages, and everybody's got a story. So you've got the French, German, Spanish, Italian, and then all the lowland versions of it. So you've got the Dutch, Luxembourg and Belgium all have their own versions of it. So this is called, the horse's name is Bayard. The epic tale itself is Renard of Montauban, but it's also frequently known as the 4 Sons of Ammon. And that's my lowland fairy tale.
All right. think we should just call it Four Dudes on a Horse from now on. I think that's the best title for this story.
It may be.
All right. Some people are just yelling out questions at you. Like, if you have any ideas for Charleston before Jeffrey Spell has to go to bed. It's like the third person that's asked for Charleston.
Sponsor a story.
I don't know. Anything. He said anything.
I've got 2 ways of getting to the same dig spot, so I'll hit the story.
Jeffrey Spell is going to bed very early. Come on, Jeff. What are you, 90? Stay up.
All right, getting into some weird stuff here. So, symbolism in the image. You've got a lion, which I'm going to say represents a king. You've got this mask, which I don't know how much information people would have had back in the day because we didn't have Wikipedia, but I think folks know that's a mask from the Fang people, but it's from the Nyquil Society of the Fang people, which basically they would use these for ceremonies, and sometimes that would be an inquisition where they would be trying to out sorcerers. So if we tie that into, if we put that in simpler terms, we would call that a witch hunt. So we're going to use that as a symbol of a miscarriage of justice. Keeping it simple, just a blue butterfly. We're going to ignore the fairy part. And then we got I don't know what kind of tree I can't remember what kind of tree that's supposed to be, but it's got a pear on it. We're just going to generically call that a fruit tree. So, Charleston. This is an interesting book to find. So I went through half a dozen books of compilations of African fairy tales. I was really focusing on West Africa, trying to thinking that this was probably tied to the slave trade. That'd be the primary source for that. But didn't find anything that really struck me there. So I just went on eBay and was like, what's really common and was available at the time? Was in print, the right era. And so because simply the fact that there were a bunch of copies on eBay, got this one. It's called More Tales from the Story Hat. So it's the sequel to the Story Hat. So again, try not to use anything that wasn't available at the time. So the story that I'm pulling this that I'm tying to this image is called Wiser Than All Kings. So long ago, there was this king, and he had tons and tons of wives. And so one of them had a baby and didn't want to be with him anymore. So she ran off and just decided to raise him on her own. And she named him Wiser Than All Kings. And then it happened that one day some of the other sons of the king were in the forest, and just they were all big and strong, and he was young and weak. And she said, I wish that he was wise and wealthy and all of that stuff. So she went to this they call it a bug hill, which just means a termite mound, but it's a magic termite mound. And so the Bug Hill granted the wish and turned him into a grown man who's wise and wealthy and has all these advisors and all this stuff. And so it came to be that the king found out about it. He had so many wives, he didn't even notice she was gone. And so he found out that, I've got this son. Well, at first he's like, that's cool. But then his advisor's like, oh no, this guy's a threat to you, so we should kill him. So he said, well, we'll devise these tests, and when he fails them, then we'll have an excuse and we can just kill him, and he won't be a threat to you anymore. So that's our witch hunt, our miscarriage of justice. So they summon him, and the first challenge is the first impossible task. They say, here's a nearby tree with sweet fruit on it, but no one can pick it because it's covered in stinging ants. So you need to pick all this fruit by tomorrow, and otherwise we'll kill you. So they all agree on that, and so the boy goes home to his magic termite mound and says, "What am I going to do?" And the termite mound says, "Don't worry, I got this." And so this magic termite mound convinced the ants to pick the fruit, and so they laid all the fruit at the base of the tree. And so he passed the first test. The second one, they said, "No, we got to come up with something tougher." So they looked at the king's cattle, and he says, "Oh, well, what was the first cow that I bought? I've got hundreds and hundreds of cows. What's the first one? You got to figure this out." And like, how's this kid going to know? He's never seen them before. And so the boy goes home to his magic hill and says, "How am I going to solve this?" And the hill says, "Oh, well, I see this blue butterfly flying by. So, you go back tomorrow, and when the blue butterfly is there, it'll land on the cow that you're supposed to pick." And so he goes back the next day and picks out the cow. I'm like, wow, how does this kid know everything? He's making us look like fools. If you like the back of the book, you should look at the boogeyman for that. And so they're like, "Man, how is this kid so wise?" So they're getting pissed off, and they just say, "Let's just set a trap for him. So dig a hole, put a bunch of spikes in the bottom, and cover up the top, and put a chair on top of it. And we'll just tell him to sit in the chair. It's not a mental task. We're just gonna kill him." And so they agree on that, and the boy goes up to it, and he's like, "Oh, well, I never sit on any chair without testing it first." And so he pokes the chair, and it just falls down into the pit, and he goes home because he doesn't want to be murdered by spikes. And so in the end, they convince him, "Hey, you need to come by the river today. We're going to crown you king. So lie on this mat, and we're going to tie a stone around your neck and throw you in the river, and then after 3 days, you'll be king." So he stages a distraction after he's been tied up, and one of his advisors comes and unties him. Oh, I forgot to mention the sunglasses here, interpreting that as just a loose rope with that little squiggle. So he loosens the ropes. The boy gets free, and he goes and hides for a while because they said, "Hey, we'll come get you after 3 days." So 3 days later, he shows up in the village and is like, "Hey, you guys crowned me king. What's up? I'm the king now." And then says about the advisor, he said, "Hey, while I was down there, drowning in the river, they said that we need to tie you up and we're going to crown you the same way." And so the villagers roll him up in a mat, put a stone around him, and throw him in the river, and he drowns. So that's I feel like a fair remuneration. That's payback, repaid in kind. So anyway, that's what I got for Charleston. But if you wanted to tie that into a place to dig, I posted something earlier this year, kind of centering around the flagpole. This kind of leads me to the same location. If you take the title as of the story as "Wiser Than All Kings could represent monarchy as a concept. So what's wiser than monarchy? Be our modern system of democracy. So two places you could go with that. You can either go to the was it the Jepson Memorial? What's the Revolutionary War one? Or Defenders of Fort Moultrie?
In Charleston?
Yeah.
You're talking about the Daughters of the Confederacy, Confederate Defenders Monument?
No, because that's Civil War. We're talking Revolutionary War. Defenders of Fort Moultrie.
Okay.
So either there or, like I said, I posted another solution that kind of centers around the modern flagpole, but either of those would be an expression of our democracy. So wiser than all kings, wiser than having a king at all. If you wanted to turn this into an actual place to look, boots on the ground.
All right, cool.
So yeah.
All right. Well, is there anything else? Is there any last minute questions from the audience? I figure I'll give them a chance. But until then, do you have anything else you want to talk about? Because we've been going like 2 hours, so I don't know.
I've got a couple more, but let it come from the audience. If there's any particular ones that people want to go down that rabbit hole.
You've been told that you need to start a storytelling podcast. So there you go. That's nice to hear. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know if there's anything else. All right. Cool.
All right.
Well, thank you. Yeah. Well, thank you for coming on. It's been a lot of fun. It's been nice to hear this. I'm agreeing with the commenters. It's been nice to hear the stories. Some random dude wants to debate you. I don't think that's going to happen.
Hey, throw it on the Facebook group, and my goal here is to get people in the rabbit hole, not to convince people that everything that I've said is right. If I'm half right, I'd be thrilled.
You want to debate some dude named Hugh J? We can do it, man. I'll set up a Sunday Funday. I don't care. It'd be nice to get debates, and then like you guys can debate, and then I can just come in and be like, "You're all wrong," and then click end stream.
If you want to set it up, do it.
All right.
But no, I'm not tied down to. Well, there are a couple of these that you'd have to fight really hard to get me to budge on, but for the most part, I was hoping that people would get excited about the theory and go and just read some books.
This is actually I'm kind of into this idea now of a debate. Like, it would be nice to get two hunters, but get an actual debate moderator who like knows the rules of debates and make people stick to the rules of debates. Like no fallacies, no nothing, just pure debate. That'd be fun. I don't think the confident people would last very long. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm open to it. I hope somebody comes and has better ideas than I do. But right. I like the rabbit hole, though, man. Jump in with me.
Well, cool. I will end stream, but don't go anywhere.
Okay.
So thanks everybody for coming.